Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to make a quiche Lorraine, but only with plant-based ingredients. Quiche Lorraine is a classic dish coming from the region of Lorraine in the northeast of France. It's a type of savory pie or tart characterized by its flaky pastry crust, creamy filling, enriched with bacon, and is celebrated for its comforting flavors and culinary versatility. But this version contains no animal products, so we're going to substitute everything to recreate the flavor, the texture, and the look of a classic quiche Lorraine. One of the secret ingredients that this quiche Lorraine includes is whipped Aquafaba. Whipped Aquafaba acts as egg whites that's going to create a lighter and fluffy batter, very similar to the traditional quiche Lorraine. Quiche Lorraine can be served warm or at room temperature. It is typically cut into wedges and can be enjoyed as a main dish or as part of a brunch spread. Let's look at the ingredients to make the pie crust. For the ingredients, you need all-purpose flour, you need some margarine or some vegan butter. I prefer to make my own rather than buying things in supermarkets. Here I show you how to make your own vegan butter. Some margarine sometimes contain milk solids, so you have to be aware of that. You need to keep the margarine in the fridge until you start the recipe because it needs to be very cold. You also need a bit of salt. You also need water, and the water also needs to be ice cold, so you can keep it into the freezer until it gets really cold, and also take it out when you start the recipe. The reason why the ingredients need to be cold is because you're going to use your hands. The hands provide heat and they're going to make the butter melt, and you don't want the butter to melt. You will see why. When you do that technique, you will have this flaky, crusty texture, and I think that just elevates what a quiche could be. For the utensils, you need a pie baking mold. Mine has the bottom that can be removed. That's very convenient when mold. Mine is 28 centimeter diameter. And you also need, how do you call that? Par baking tools. And to par bake the dough, you need some weight. So what I use is corn kernels that I had in my pantry for a long time. So they were expired. You can also use beans. And I put that into 2 sheets of aluminum foil that I use over and over. I put 2 sheets because when you lift it, it's quite heavy. So you also need a rolling pin. And if you have this type of tools, that's called, in French we call it Recette. In English, I don't know how you call it. This one is 3 millimeter high. If you don't have, it's fine. We do the old way. That's just like tools that make things easier. The utensils you need to make the filling for the quiche is a blender, and you also need an egg whipper. A tool that is quite useful when you are baking is a bench scraper. And for this recipe, we will also need some cling film. I'm trying to avoid using plastics in my kitchen now, but I don't know what else to use besides parchment paper or aluminum foil that all also have their problems. If you have some suggestions, let me know in the comment section. To start making the dough, we're going to add the salt into the flour, just to make sure that it's well incorporated. And with a fork, you stir it. Then we're going to add the margarine, and this you can do in one go. What we're going to do first is to coat the margarine with flour by lifting it. And when the pieces of margarine are coated with flour, we're going to start to pinch them like this, like as if you want to squeeze them and reduce them in some sort of smaller parts that are flatter. And we're going to do 1 by 1, I mean 2 by 2. And regularly, you're going to recoat them with flour. So now I have squeezed some of them, and then I mix again, and then I continue. The size here doesn't really matter. If you were doing that on already warmed margarine, it will melt and it will combine with the flour. So here we're going to have like little flat bits of margarine that are going to remain in the dough, and you're going to do that until all the little cubes are squeezed. So then we're going to add the water, but we're going to add half of the half cup, so it's 1/4. So this I'm going to eyeball it, and then with the fork we're going to start to mix to incorporate the liquid to the flour. It's still a bit dry, so I'm going to add a little bit more. So here we go, like literally drop by drop. I think we are good. So the texture is somehow like wet sand, but you still have bits. So what we're going to do is we're going to flatten and make the flour compact to himself. And we're going to scoop out what has been clumped together. So that means that those pieces have been hydrated and they start to come together. What we don't want at this stage is to put too much water and get a sticky dough. So here I'm going to add a tiny bit. And then to finish, we're going to add a tiny bit of water, also a few drops. Stir, and then add it here. Add it to the loaf. So that way you don't overwork your dough and you add the right amount of humidity. Has a nice consistency now, it stays together, it's not sticky. And you are going to flatten this mass to something as close as you can to a rectangle. You can use the bench scraper to help you and also to gather all the leftovers. And we're going to wrap the dough into a cling film. And then we're going to let the dough rest 2 hours into the fridge. If you can do overnight, it's even better. The dough has rested 2 hours in the fridge, actually a bit longer. So now it's time to flatten it. Now the consistency is great. The flour has absorbed all the water. It's still a bit hard because it's cold, but it feels malleable. So we're going to add a bit of flour to keep it from sticking. And we're going to stretch it a bit. So if it's a bit hard, you can beat it. That's going to soften it. So we are going to stretch it a bit in the length. And if it breaks, it doesn't matter. It will come back together. We are going to create a sort of like a bit like puff pastry. We're going to create layers by flipping this part over itself like an envelope. And then we're going to flatten it also. If it sticks like this, I'm going to put some flour here and a bit more there. So you need to move the dough regularly to prevent it from sticking. So here it's not sticking, so it's good. And in order to lengthen it into the other direction, you have to turn it. So I'm going to check with my mold, so it's still too small. So at this point, you can use those 3mm high ruler. And that's going to allow to stretch the dough at the right thickness. So here in the length, I'm good. I need to stretch it the other direction. Yeah, starting to stick. Okay. So if it tears like it does here, I take a piece there and I place it on top and I roll again. So in order to place this inside the mold without tearing it, I like to fold the dough in itself. So it will be easier to manipulate and to place it on the mold. So it's getting warm here and I can feel that the margarine is starting to melt. And then you unfold. So then you need to edge the dough to the corners of the mold like this to really make sure that it really goes to every edge and there's no pocket of air. And then you press it against the walls. And then something I like to do is to roll over like this to get rid of the excess. And then you can remove all the excess of dough that you can keep. You can freeze it. So you're going to compact it like this. Don't make a ball because you're going to destroy all the layers. You can make something else with it. And we're going to put it in the fridge at least 15 minutes because it's always better to bake a crust or dough when it's cold. The main ingredient that we're going to use to make the filling for the quiche is the silk tofu. Silk tofu is going to give you softness, creaminess. To loosen it, we're going to use some plant milk. So here I have oat, but you could also use soy. To flavor this filling, we're going to add some yellow mustard. Yellow mustard has a slight egg taste. So we just put a bit of it just to have this hint of flavor. One of the particular ingredients is the black salt, also called kalanamak. The black salt has a flavor that you find in eggs when you boil them. If you don't have this black salt or you can't find it or you don't like the flavor, you can just use regular salt. In order to enhance the fat content, we're going to add a bit of margarine. To bring some umami flavor, we're going to add a bit of nutritional yeast. You also need few drops of a lemon. And then in order to bind everything together, we're going to add some cornstarch. You could also use chickpea flour. Most of the quiche that I've tried that use a combination of tofu or chickpea flour end up being very dense. What I was trying to recreate is the action of the eggs that bring some lightness to the filling. So in order to do that, I had the idea to use Aquafaba. And the last ingredient are the lardons, the star of the quiche. Here I show you how to make plant-based lardons. So we're going to whip the aquafaba until the foam peaks. So the aquafaba forms just like egg whites. We are going to make a meringue. We're going to add a few drops of lemon juice. So lemon juice helps to stabilize the egg whites. Aquafaba forms better when it's cold, so keep it in the fridge until you use it. This is firm, so keep it aside in the fridge. In the blender, we're going to add the silk tofu, the oat milk, then the mustard, the black salt, the margarine, the nutritional yeast, and the cornstarch. And then we're going to blend all this until it's perfectly smooth. That's the reason why we need a blender. It's ready. So we scrape all the leftovers. And then we're going to pour over a third of the batter on the egg whites to loosen the egg whites. I mean, it's not the egg whites, it's the aquafaba, but... And then we're going to mix. And then you can add the rest. And then you already see that you obtain lighter batter. There's a lot of air bubbles. You're going to obtain that kind of like similar batter that I found when using eggs. So keep it aside in the fridge. First thing first, we're going to fry the lardons, the bacon bits. I cut them into small squares because in a quiche you don't want big pieces. And I'm going to use the air fryer because it's very convenient for that. If you don't have an air fryer, on a pan, non-stick or cast iron works very well. Try to keep them from overlapping and spread them evenly. And I'm going to make them fry for like 15 to 20 minutes until they start to sizzle and they become golden brown with some dark bits. So it's been 15 minutes and I think they are ready. I'm going to let them cool down and we're going to continue with the quiche filling. In the meantime, you are going to turn on your oven to 200 degrees Celsius. What I like to do when I par bake is to put the pie mold into a tray, and it's also easier to manipulate. Then we're going to put the weight. So we're going to stretch the aluminum foil to the very edge of the crust and then push to make sure that the aluminum foil is touching the walls. Because what happens is if you don't par bake with weight, the edges are going to collapse. Then you're going to have a beautiful result. Okay? So we're going to par bake for 20 minutes. So after 20 minutes, we're going to remove the par baking. Carefully, without burning yourself. So here you have to catch all the corners and it's secure. So we're going to bring down the temperature to 160 degrees Celsius to continue the baking of the crust. And we're going to bake until golden brown. The crust is fully baked. So before that, we're going to raise the temperature to 180. And we take it out to add the filling. So now we are going to add the filling. So spread it evenly that it covers the entire bottom of the pie. I mean, actually, it's not pie; it's a tart. And now we're going to sprinkle the lardon, so the bacon, over it. Try to do it evenly. If the bits are too big, you can cut them in smaller bits. So I think some of them. Et voilà. So now we're going to bake the quiche for 20 minutes at 180 degrees Celsius. The quiche has baked for 25 minutes, and to give it that golden brown surface, I put the quiche under the broiler for 5 minutes at 180 degrees until you get brown spot on the surface. If you want to give it a shinier surface finish, you can brush it with some olive oil or whatever oil that you want, or even the margarine. I put a piece of margarine and I'm going to let them melt, and then I'm going to brush to spread it carefully because it's still hot, so it's still fragile, but then you're going to have a more shiny finish. Et voilà, our quiche is ready to be served. You need to let it cool down at least 10 minutes for it to set, and then you can slice it and serve it. Let's have a piece of quiche. Wow. It's very, very smooth from the fork. The crust is perfectly flaky. The batter is light and airy. Smooth. It melts in the mouth. It's very close to a traditional quiche. I think the ratio of lardon is perfect. You just have a hint of this bacon flavor. Yeah, that's a success. I really encourage you to par bake the crust. It takes more time, but the result is incredible. If you don't par bake the crust, it's going to be soggy. So you're going to have this kind of, the bottom of the crust is going to be mushy. It's still eatable, but here it's flaky everywhere. That's a delight. And the pairing with salad is a perfect match. With the French vinaigrette, delicious. And Perrier. If you like this recipe, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Give a like to support the growth of my channel as well. That's important. And let me know what sort of classic traditional French recipe you would like me to do next. So I'm going to finish my quiche and I see you in the next video. Bye.